Game Week 23 is here, so it's time to lock in those FPL teams. Welcome to FPL Mate, my name is Dan, and I've actually already made a transfer. I have one more free transfer to use as well, so let's go over all things Game Week 23 with my team selection for this game week. So guys, a quick overview of my Game Week 22 scores, and yeah, I have to be honest, not the greatest of week for me. Far from a disaster with a 15,000 place red arrow down to 187,000, which I think for most people, that's a pretty good rank at this stage of the season, but I don't know, I still feel like I should be pushing for a little bit higher than that. But with double and blank game weeks coming up and having a great strategy to tackle all of them, I think I will soon rise up the ranks. But even before the double game weeks, even around the double game weeks, I still want to make sure I am putting myself in a good position to succeed. But the season still has plenty of time to go. I'm in a good starting position to capitalize on that. So let's look through my scores from Game Week 22 briefly. Not really too much to say. Only 3 players returned for me, and one of them was Lewis Hall, and a 4-pointer barely feels like a return. 11 points for Salah, 11 points for Trent, 12 points for Wood. Everyone else blanked. Really disappointing, particularly as I have Castagna and Kirkes on my bench who both returned in Game Week 22. But it's better to have them ready for next time than to not have them at all, I suppose. But there we go, guys. I think it was a low-scoring game week anyway, so not massively impactful in the grand scheme of things. Probably a good week to have a bad game week, if you will pardon the cliche. But with that said, we do need to move on to Game Week 23. And actually, I think a lot of the issues around my team in Game Week 22 can actually quickly turn into positives in Game Week 23, and I'm going to tell you exactly why. But before I tell you why, you know the drill by now, guys. You're on a yellow card if you haven't liked the video yet. You might be getting a red card if you don't like before the video is up, so make sure you do leave a like on the video. It massively helps out the channel, and do subscribe if you want to follow along with my team each and every game week. Let's move on to Game Week 23. Okay, guys, so 2 free transfers prior to the first transfer that I made, which I'll tell you about shortly. 0.1 million in the bank. Let's get it going. Starting off with Raya in goal, who has pretty good fixtures over the next 4 weeks, actually. And Arsenal generally, I think they have a nice little run here. Wolves next up in 23. Man City, not so great, but a home fixture against them often does breed clean sheets. Arsenal looking to park the bus there. Followed by Leicester and West Ham. After that, the fixtures do get a little trickier for Arsenal, but certainly in the next 4, I don't really mind this run of fixtures too much. And before we bring up our next player, I do just want to go through some of these defensive numbers here. So Arsenal still, as always, sitting at the top for non-penalty expected goals against over the past 10 game weeks, just 6.9. However, they have actually conceded 9 goals during this period, so they are underperforming on their expected goals conceded, and I wonder if there is some confidence issues at Arsenal right now, which is leading to these odd goals being conceded, especially when they spend so much time on the ball. We do see them getting counter-attacked quite often, and therefore goals are being conceded, which is frustrating. It's happening against every opponent. We saw last week 1-pointers for those Arsenal defenders. It's not too great, is it? But I think Liverpool, it's really interesting that they are closing the gap now. Now, we did see Arsenal previously were way ahead of the pack for these expected goals against stats, but Liverpool are catching up now, and certainly with the addition of Konate to the team, Alisson's been back for, I believe, 6 game weeks now. That's really improved Liverpool as well. And I think they will continue to, I don't know, catch up with Arsenal for the defensive numbers. A couple other teams to highlight here. Brighton have risen up the table, as have Crystal Palace and Bournemouth, with teams like Fulham, Nottingham Forest dropping down into mid-table. Wolves are down below mid-table now as well after a couple of tough game weeks for them. So if you want to be targeting certain teams, of course, we're still looking to try and get goals against Southampton. Southampton, Leicester, Spurs, Ipswich, Brentford, West Ham, and of course Wolves are dropping down into those areas as well in terms of those weaker defences in the Premier League. But we did mention Liverpool, and we will mention them once more because Trent Alexander-Arnold is in my team, and boy am I glad about that. I think a lot of people have had mixed feelings about Trent and whether he is worth the money that you pay for him, but certainly over the last few game weeks we've seen him get multiple double-digit returns, and I think against Ipswich at home we're going to see another opportunity there as well. Liverpool being a strong defence right now in the Premier League, and this is a very favourable fixture, a team that just lost 6-0 to Man City. So Trent, can he be involved in goals? Of course he can. We know this by now. Clean sheets are always going to be a possibility for this Liverpool team as well. And after that, we have these crucial game weeks, double game week in 24 against Bournemouth and Everton, and of course against Wolves as well in 25. So nice little run for Trent. We like him a lot. And yeah, I think if you haven't got Trent in your team right now, I would just make it happen. However you do it, gotta make it happen at this point, I think. We've got Gabriel in the team still as well. And like I mentioned, really nice fixtures for Arsenal. Can this breed some clean sheets or some more clean sheets? Finally, that would be very nice because they've only kept 3 in the last 10 game weeks. And when you look at teams like Newcastle and Nottingham Forest keeping more clean sheets, you've got to think Arsenal, with all of their great defensive data, they've got to start actually capitalising on that. And Gabriel, I still am very keen on as an FPL asset. I know some people will be looking to remove him, but Gabriel, I am super keen on him because it's not just the clean sheets you get from him. You also get attacking returns. And over the last few game weeks, I feel he has been very unlucky not to get any attacking returns. A couple of, well, he had an assist. There was a couple of almost assists, almost goals in there as well. So he does continue to be a threat from those set pieces. And there's still a lot of positive signs, not just from a defensive point of view, but from attacking point of view as well. So there's multiple reasons to like Gabriel, although in general, I'm not super keen on taking double Arsenal defence along for too much longer in my FPL team, but more on that later. Lewis Hall is the final defender in my team. An away fixture against Southampton is very favourable indeed. He's obviously becoming a very popular pick at the moment. And this really is his last good fixture for a little while, so really hoping to capitalise on that. We saw Lewis Hall get the assist last game week from taking the corner, so Hall on some set pieces, advancing very high on that left hand side to create for the likes of Gordon and Isak. He is FPL points waiting to happen. We've seen it time and time and again over the past 5-6 game weeks how good Lewis Hall is, and it's a great week to have him in your team. Although I have to say, if I didn't have him already, would I be buying him? Probably still, to be fair. Let's move into midfield, guys. We've got Mo Salah against Ipswich. What a fantastic opportunity. If Phil Foden can do all that against Ipswich, I wonder what Mo Salah can do. And maybe even get a mega score in this week. In fact, many people think that Salah might even score better against Ipswich than he will in the double game week. Not sure I agree with that one, but certainly Ipswich at home is a very good opportunity right now, with Ipswich a little all over the place after last game week, and Liverpool coming off the back of a win in the Champions League, which is very, very useful. And yeah, they do need to make sure they are getting some more results, because it came close against Brentford last week before them eventually winning 2-0. And Arsenal, with the good fixtures they have, you know, Liverpool do need to really get ahead of the pack, take the pressure off themselves. And I think that's exactly what they're going to do over the next 2-3 game weeks, with that game in hand to play there as well. Salah, no risk of rotation, which is very useful to see. But we've got to move on to Cole Palmer here as well, who has been disappointing at times, and I know a lot of people are selling him for some reason, but I'm going to bring up the numbers, I'm going to bring up the stats for you guys for midfielders. And even though Foden, for expected goal involvement over the past 6 game weeks, has caught up with Palmer, we do still see Salah as the number 1 midfielder in the game, and it's kind of joint between Foden and Palmer in second place. But I think with Palmer, the fixtures are significantly better, so I do still vastly prefer Palmer to someone like Foden. And the fixtures, I know right now, they don't look great. Man City away, West Ham at home is good, of course. Brighton, Aston Villa, kind of average. But after that, Chelsea do actually face Southampton and Leicester, both at home in game weeks 27 and 28. And there's no way I'd want to be missing Palmer for that one. So anyone considering selling Palmer, absolutely not. And I think he's going to actually be a genuine captain option before too long when we get to some of those really, really top fixtures. Southampton at home, Leicester at home. These are the two best fixtures a player can have in their entire season. Gordon is up next. And he's another player who's been putting up really good numbers. He's actually currently in 5th place for expected goal. Well, technically 4th place for expected goal involvements per start, which is really, really nice. Disappointing against Bournemouth, but back against Southampton. I think this is one of those things where I was saying Game Week 22 was rough for me as someone who is on triple Newcastle. But now that Newcastle face Southampton, having triple Newcastle sways massively back in my favour. So I think this is going to be a really good opportunity for me to really gain some points on those FPL managers who maybe scored points against me last week because they didn't have those Newcastle players that obviously disappointed last week. So I think the pendulum may swing this week back in my favour. That is how FPL works, to be fair. Because you can't have everyone in the game of FPL, sometimes the players you don't have will have good game weeks, and other weeks the players you do have will have good game weeks as well. So hopefully this week is going to be good for me. But next up is Myla Sarr, who is certainly edging towards the chopping block. When we see his underlying numbers, he is dropping lower and lower down the table for expected goal involvements per start. He's now down to 0.4, which still suggests that he should be doing better than he has been doing. Just 1 assist in the past 4 or 5 game weeks, for example. Not quite good enough. But Brentford at home, as we mentioned earlier, is still a really nice fixture. So maybe after this game week, I do need to reconsider Sarr's place in my team. Now, that might be me benching him. It might be me selling him. It all depends on what options become available. And of course, with Crystal Palace and Newcastle having a very high chance of blanking in game week 29, we'll find that out after the game week 24 deadline. So I'm feeling maybe I should wait until then before committing to any decisions on Ismaila Sarr. Maybe he could be a useful substitute rotation option for me at 5.8 million. I shouldn't really be expecting him to start and perform in my FPL team every week. That's not really the role of those cheap midfielders. But speaking of cheap midfielders, Rodgers is back in my starting 11, and I'm very excited about that as well. West Ham at home is the fixture, and we've got some good fixtures for Aston Villa coming up, to be fair. And even though Rodgers isn't really a stats guy, as we've seen time and time again this season, there are certain players who just overperform to such a degree that you can pretty much ignore the Opta data. And Rodgers is certainly one of those guys. Comes out, gets a little bit lucky from time to time, pops out with these huge performances, and he is a player who I think we all naturally have a lot of faith in because he has proven himself time and time again this Premier League season. There are times to play him, there are times to bench him, but I think right now, and perhaps over the next 3 or 4 game weeks, these are times to play the Aston Villa man. Let's go up front with Alexander Isak, and we're rolling with a 3-5-2 formation today. Alexander Isak against Southampton, another fabulous opportunity for him. And even though Bournemouth kept him incredibly quiet, I can't see that happening again this week. Looking at the data here, guys, we see Isak is still number 1 in the Premier League for forwards, for expecting goal involvements, and indeed he is also top for actual output as well. So this is one of those cases where the data and the actual performances are converging really nicely. We understand that Isak is the top performer, the top man for data. Everything is going exactly as planned. And at this point, if you don't own Isak, what are you doing with your FPL team? But if we look a little lower down the table, we see the Mr. Chris Wood, who continues to put up really mediocre data with 0.3 expected goal involvements per game, and yet he just keeps doing it. Now, Chris Wood faces Bournemouth away this week, and judging by what Bournemouth did to Isak, that kind of looks bad. And I think some people will be considering benching Wood. However, and I know I said the same thing about Isak last game week, when a player is in such amazing form, you kind of do just have to back them. You know, a player in good form will often score against anyone, and there will be exceptions to that, of course, and it's certainly a bad time for Forest to be playing Bournemouth, but I still have that faith in Chris Wood. Having a penalty taker as well there, you only need to get lucky and you'll get an FPL return from a guy like him. But yes, Viva la Chris Wood. I'm going to continue to back him for the next few game weeks, going nowhere in my team at all. But you may have noticed there is a forward missing from my team. So let's bring up the bench before we look at transfers. Fabianski stays rooted to the bench with his away fixture against Aston Villa. We've got Nicholas Jackson here as well. Yes, that's the headline. He is currently on my bench away against Man City. His numbers are down. His data is down. You know, I've mentioned a lot that I was just trusting Jackson because his data was still, well, really good actually, particularly in comparison to a lot of the other forwards. But I think recently we've seen more forwards step up their game a little bit in terms of what they're actually producing, their data, and the fixtures changing a little bit as well. And even though I do like Jackson's fixtures after the Man City game, I do feel that he is a player who is rightfully at this point on the chopping block for me. I think he's such a confidence player that I was really hoping that he would just get a goal at some point, and getting that goal might give him the confidence to continue to perform. I was just waiting for that goal, and I've been waiting and waiting and waiting, and it's just not happened, quite frankly. It's really not happened, which is really frustrating. So I'm at this situation right now where I have to consider, do I sell him? Do I just cut my losses here, sell him? Or do I think, okay, the fixtures are getting very good soon. Can he just break his duck, get that goal, and start putting up some decent performances? Well, I don't know. So currently he's on my bench. Let's see where he is by the end of the video. And of course, on the bench, we also have Kirkes against Forest. I actually don't mind him as a backup player, but I think we have to back Hall against Southampton this week. And Castagna against Manchester United is also in here. And I think a lot of my bench-related decisions this week, because I do have a strong squad, which is good. And it's going to be really useful when we get to doubles and blanks. A lot of it came down to the data, and particularly the odds. So let's have a look at Rob T's projected goals and clean sheet odds for Game Week 23. And we see in the competition between Trent, Gabriel, Hall, Kirkes and Castagna, Trent, Gabriel and Hall have the best clean sheet odds for this game week. Liverpool 52%, Arsenal 42%. So Liverpool actually ahead of Arsenal for their chances of clean sheets in this game week. And then we see Newcastle with 36%, which is of course ahead of Bournemouth at 29% and Fulham at 28% there as well. So I think I've got things right in terms of my defenders, certainly when we look at the odds. And then we have a look at the goals. So projected goals for each game. Chelsea are projected 1.5 goals. And I think that is a little low when you are kind of hoping for a Jackson goal involvement. I think that is a little low. If Chelsea were projected 2 or more goals, then I'd be far more willing to go for Jackson or start a Jackson. And that's certainly what I've been doing recently. But given that everyone is selling Jackson anyway, I think there is very little risk in just benching him this week. Best case scenario, he is actually that he scores whilst on my bench, regains that confidence, and then I can reconsider keeping him. Worst case scenario, he blanks again, and we move on to next game week, or maybe even do some of this week, but maybe next week or the week after or the week after that, whenever, and we sell Jackson and remove some of the, let's be honest, a lot of money that's been spent on him. And I'm looking largely at 2 players that I want to get into my team a lot at the moment outside of Liverpool, who are super obvious. I got to triple up on Liverpool. That's going to happen. Don't you worry. But I'm looking at Brentford players. So Mbermo and Wissa are both putting up fabulous numbers right now. Really nice. And the fixtures look good for them as well. After Crystal Palace away, which admittedly is not the greatest fixture. After that, Spurs at home, West Ham away, Everton away, Leicester away, Everton away, Aston Villa at home. That's a nice little run of 5 as far as I'm concerned. And I think Mbermo and Wissa could be really useful players to have during that run. Of course, Brentford are also guaranteed a fixture in Game Week 29 against Bournemouth. So it could be useful to get a few more bodies in my squad to make sure I can field least 10 players in my team in Game Week 29, and I will be covering my Game Week 29 plans very, very shortly. Don't you worry about that. But I've mentioned the Brentford players that I'm keen to get in right now, but Liverpool player is the priority against Ipswich and ahead of their double game week in 24. Got to get it sorted now, guys. For some people, they'll be going for Luis Diaz or Gakpo, Konate, Van Dijk. Some people may be on McAllister, but for me, I'm going for Alisson. And we mentioned this before, it is all part of a larger strategy for me. But one big reason is I want to have that nailed on guy. I want to have that nailed on guy for the better clean sheets than Raya, who will be removed from my team. I've already made this transfer ahead of the price changes, managed to free up a little bit of money. And I think Alisson is really a goalkeeper that can just be held on for the rest of the season. In blank game week 29, if Liverpool were to blank, I can just play Fabianski against Everton. We've got a likely double game week for Liverpool in game week 33. If everything goes right for Liverpool, they'll also be doubling in game week 36 as well. So this is going to be a really useful goalkeeper that will have multiple double game weeks between now and the end of the season. So Alisson is my guy, and that's certainly not to say Gakpo is a bad pick. I love Gakpo as a pick as well, but for my strategy, Alisson works best for me. And I think that the difference perhaps between my team and maybe some other people is that if they don't sell Jackson for Gakpo, then they might not have the backup there in their team. I can just bench Jackson. I've got Rodgers here. I've got Sarr here. I've got Wood, who I'm happy to play. I've got all of these cheap players who I can throw on my starting 11 without having to try and find a Jackson replacement immediately. And Jackson really is a player I would like to hold off on selling, maybe just for this week, and figure out what I want to do, look at the moving parts, who do I want to bring into my team, and try and figure out a wider strategy, because Jackson is a cash cow player, and I have no doubt that he will be sold by game week 29 for me, but I need to figure out exactly what route I'm going to be taking. And so much of that is down to double and blank game weeks. But with this new team set, we can set our captain's armband on Mo Salah. Yep, going boring this week, I'm afraid, guys. But I just don't think you doubt Salah against this Ipswich side. Even though I do love the idea of captaining Isak as well. It's a shame that Salah and Isak both play really nice fixtures at the same time. But we're going to go the Salah direction this week. But again, I don't blame anyone for going for Isak. I think it's a really nice differential, but already having triple Newcastle, I think already gives me enough investment in that Newcastle side for game week 23. And looking through this team, you know, we've got good clean sheet odds all around. We've got good attackers, mostly playing favourable fixtures. The exceptions maybe being Palmer and Wood. Everyone else has got green fixtures, if you like. The whole back line has got green fixtures. So I think I'm really well set up for game week 23, actually. And with that second free transfer, I want to roll it as part of the wider strategy to navigate blank game week 29. Let's talk about that next. So we've spoken about already a little bit where the doubles and blanks are going to be for the remainder of the season. We talk about Liverpool, lots recently. But of course, going into game week 29, this is going to be the most significant blank game week of the season so far. And it's most likely that Crystal Palace, Newcastle, because, yeah, I could go on and explain why these things are happening, but Newcastle, Crystal Palace, Liverpool, and Aston Villa, these are the four teams most likely to blank in game week 29. It is far from settled, and it basically comes down to who wins the League Cup semi-finals, who goes through to the final, and who their oppositions are set to be in game week 29. Depending on that, will define who will blank in game week 29. If you're playing in the EFL Cup final, you and your scheduled opposition are unavailable to play in game week 29. So there we go. And let's go through my team and just have a look. This is on the Fantasy Football Hub app here, guys, and we can see exactly what players are likely to blank. So yeah, it does it all for you guys. So make sure you are checking out the Fantasy Football Hub My Team tool, link in the description. Get going for free. And you can see the kind of crosshatch here and the projections of how likely the probability of the fixture taking place, which is really, really useful just to have at a glance. So yeah, you can see that Rodgers has only a 38% chance of playing in game week 29. We've got Jackson here has a 84% chance of playing in Game Week 29, so a little bit higher there. And you can see I will have, well, I do have, after the Alisson transfer, I'll have Fabianski, Kirkes, Wood as my 3 guaranteed players, and then after that we're going to have some more players there as well. We're going to have at least, well, I won't go into all of it, but likely I'll have Gabriel, Palmer, Castagna there as well if it is Crystal Palace, Newcastle, Liverpool, Aston Villa, blank. So minimum of 7 players I already have for Game Week 29, and I'm happy to go in with 10 players. The problem is, if I do navigate 29 with transfers alone, and I do want to save my free hit for later on in the season for the bigger blank game week, then I'm probably going to have to sacrifice some team value here. So I'm thinking maybe Game Week 29, if I can save enough free transfers, we maybe consider removing Alexander-Arnold and going for maybe go for a Murillo or some kind of Forest defender against Ipswich. For Salah, we can maybe think about going for a Foden if he continues his good form, has good fixtures from there, so Brighton. And that would bring us to 9 players. I think Jackson will go, so he might actually be able to fund some moves. I think I will sell Rodgers, because even though Rodgers, if he blanks at 29, he'll double in 33. The double will be pretty rough. So his double game week would be in game week 33. If I just remind myself, it's something like it will be Liverpool at home, and the other fixture would be, hold on one second, guys. It would be Newcastle, yeah. So yeah, I did check this earlier. It's a rough double game week, even if Rodgers does get one. So I don't think I'd want him in my team necessarily anyway. So someone like Ahmad, I think, would work pretty well here if we go for someone like Ahmad. So that would take us to 10 players for the double game week. Maybe if we remove Sarr as well, we could get one more. So let's think here. Who else could we bring in? I don't know. Maybe go for another Man City player for now. But honestly, it could be anyone. Bruno? I don't know. But yeah, certainly what that will do is, let's put Wissa in as well, because I think I'm keen on going for Wissa. I think that will give me a strong enough team for Game Week 29. This would give me 11 players, and of course, things will change depending on who actually ends up blanking in Game Week 29. But I think this would be good enough. And certainly from Game Week 30 onwards, it would mean that I get to keep my triple Newcastle, who I have a lot of team value tied up in. I mean, I'm still considering maybe Gordon as a sell, but I'll have a lot of team value invested there. So we could maybe go Gordon on, and we could bench Castagna, we could bench Murillo, we could put Alisson back in and start to think about, okay, we now will know who's doubling in 33. Hopefully we'll still have more transfers to use at this point, because I am being so careful with saving them. Let's start to build purely towards Game Week 33. I'll have 30, 31, 32, and of course 33. There'll be 4 transfers there, plus any I've saved to start getting my team back on track. And that's likely to involve bringing players like Salah and Trent back, depending on whether I want to use the assistant manager in Game Week 33, because if so, I only need 2 Liverpool players if I use my assistant manager on a slot. So that's another consideration there as well. And yeah, I think that will be pretty good. It's very difficult to say exactly what I would do from this point, because we are talking so far in the future. We really are. But just as a rough idea to start giving you guys some insight as to what's going on in my mind in terms of chip strategy, this is what I'm thinking of doing. Something similar to this. And then after Game Week 33, free hit in 34, wildcard in 35, bench boost in 36, and a whole bunch of points, I hope, during a period where I think the majority of FPL managers will be pretty unprepared for the end of the season. I think a lot of people won't see the chaos of the doubles and blanks happening in such quick succession at the end of the season. I think a lot of people won't see them coming. So yeah, my plan is to really, try and make the most of the end of the season. So put this excuse in early. If my rank doesn't look great, you know, in around Game Week 29, 30, 31, don't worry. Big boosts will be coming my way for the final few game weeks of the season. And it all comes down to this strategy that I have to navigate Game Week 29 with free transfers alone, trying to make transfers right now only when absolutely essential. And hopefully I won't tank too many points, but I don't think I will, to be honest, because I think my team is generally pretty strong still. So there we go, guys. That is my strat right now. If you guys enjoyed this, make sure you drop a like. Do subscribe if you're new around here. Check out another video if you like. 100 Experts went out yesterday, and of course Buy Sell Keep Avoid is out as well. And I'll catch you tomorrow for another video. See you later, mates. Bye bye.